Hi friends, I'm SJW Nonsense, and I'm so honoured to be doing the guest video of the month of February for Bain. Today we're going to talk about the feminist concept of
the male gaze,
the male gaze,
male gaze,
on the male gaze,
the male gaze,
the male gaze. This theory began its life in 1975, when feminist academic Laura Mulvey drew on the work of Lacan and Freud to create an analysis of film. The simple version you'll often hear is something like this.
The male gaze is a concept that was established in 70s feminist theory. It focused on how the camera and films lingers on women and sexualizes them in non-sexual contexts. So female characters are chosen and written with the pleasure of men in mind. The theory also refers to the fact that most of the media is viewed through a male perspective. The male gaze is considered dehumanizing because it treats women as one-dimensional sex objects without any agency or desires of her own. She's just kind of plopped into the plot line for no other reason than sexual titillation.
This sounds like feminist nonsense, but nothing too crazy. I mean, women are often on screen for eye candy, right? If you actually read Mulvey's work though, you'll see how ridiculous her view really is. Her key essay on the male gaze is just 11 pages long, but much of what she covers is ignored by people who want to bring her work to the masses to avoid putting them off. Mulvey talks about society as phallocentric, that is, centered around the penis, and describes the way that men view women as castrated. She even uses the popular feminist euphemism of women's bleeding wound and its connections to castration. Disgusting? Yes. Disturbing? Most definitely. Mulvey's view is that the female's lack of penis threatens men by challenging their embedded belief that the penis is basically everything. This is a staple in feminist theory. Men hate women and oppress them because they show that it's possible to live without a penis. She explains that feminists like this theory because it is an exact rendering of the frustration experienced under the phallocentric order. It brings an articulation of the problem closer. Feminists of today might put it another way. The theory matches their lived experiences or subjective view of life. Of course, though, it is difficult to explain female experiences with patriarchal tools like language and logic. So any inconsistencies in their arguments are only because the tools they must use were designed by and for men.
by men, for men.
What you'll usually hear from Mulvey's work is the concept that men look and women are to be looked at. Men desire, women are desired. Men objectify, women are objectified. She claims that the male patriarchy sees women as passive and men as active, and that film reflects this, creating a loop of reinforcement that feeds itself. She acknowledges that men in film are also glamorized, but claims that male characters are unattainably attractive so that men identify with them. Thus, the treatment of men is a result of male ego and not sexual desire, so is apparently not the same thing and is therefore not an issue. Mulvey then circles back to her castration theory, stating, the male unconscious has two avenues of escape from this castration anxiety. Preoccupation with the reenactment of the original trauma, investigating the woman, demystifying her mystery, counterbalanced by the devaluation, punishment, or saving of the guilty object. What she's saying is that men display women as objects of desire and pleasure as a way of dealing with the trauma of the possibility of castration. She calls this a fetish, apparently ignoring the normal biological imperatives that drive attraction of men to women. She also claims that portraying women negatively, or saving a woman, is another form of an attempt to deal with this trauma. She considers this a form of sadism. Mulvey concludes by stating that the way to counter all of this is to free the look of the camera into its materiality in time and space, and the look of the audience into dialectics, passionate detachment, which she acknowledges destroys the satisfaction, pleasure, and privilege of film. Something she considers a good thing, because it will highlight how much film depended on the male gaze in the first place. She states that women, whose image has continually been stolen and used for this end, cannot view the decline of the traditional film form with anything much more than sentimental regret. So basically, break down the art of filmmaking, don't let filmmakers frame shots or do anything to direct the eye of the viewer, and let the art of film die a brutal death as it is sucked dry of anything creative or enjoyable. You know, what happens to everything feminists touch. So of the 11 pages that make up this essay, only the most sane elements have carried into popular parlance, although all these concepts are commonplace in liberal arts degrees to this day. A scholar by the name of John Berger is particularly responsible for carrying this theory beyond film, applying the concept of the male gaze to fine arts throughout history. He argues that the unseen eye of the artist and the viewer is a male eye, oppressing women by looking upon them without their consent. One of the big things he focuses on is eye contact. In most female nudes, the woman has her eyes lowered or directed away from the viewer, thus indicating that she does not know she is being looked at and does not consent to that gaze. The exceptions to this are usually prostitutes, as in these works by Manet. Images where women are looking at the viewer are considered subversive, challenging the male gaze and giving the woman agency. It makes sense that most women would be depicted as not flaunting their nakedness, given that virtue and chastity have historically been considered feminine ideals. But to Berger and others like him, this is not a sufficient explanation. Berger and others who have furthered male gaze theory do not leave this at art, but extrapolate it to the real world and the relations between men and women more widely. The male gaze in art, they argue, is inseparable from the gendered power dynamics at play every day.
Consider the implications of having men decide what we do and don't look at. Ultimately, it's going to reinforce a patriarchal society.
Men act and women appear. Men look at women. Women watch themselves being looked at. This determines not only most relations between men and women, but also the relation of women to themselves.
A woman is always accompanied, except when quite alone, perhaps even then, by her own image of herself. While she is walking across a room or weeping at the death of her father, she cannot avoid envisaging herself walking or weeping. From earliest childhood, she is taught and persuaded to survey herself continually. She has to survey everything she is and everything she does, because how she appears to others, and particularly how she appears to men, is of crucial importance for what is normally thought of as the success of her life.
The male gaze isn't just in art, film, and video games. The male gaze is now in real life. Women experience it just by moving through the world with males. They don't even have to be around men at the time. Women internalize the male gaze and use it to judge themselves and other women.
The male gaze is also not in any way limited to men or heterosexual people. Almost all of us internalize and sometimes identify with the male gaze to some extent.
Women are even starting to see themselves in this way too, by getting visual pleasure from seeing other women in this male gaze in film.
Here's a list of things that are now considered a result of the male gaze. Cosmetic surgery, including boob jobs, labiaplasty, and vaginal rejuvenation. Makeup. The acceptance of lesbian relationships. Women hating other women. Direct messaging a woman or attempting to flirt with her. Women laughing at men's jokes. Men going into a room that has women in it. And the entire concept of God. No matter how much women claim to hate the male gaze, they have a tendency to complain when they no longer receive male attention. But should you want to partake in feminist subversion of the male gaze, how can you do it? Well, many say it's impossible for women to ever escape it completely, but there are suggestions. 1. Be an elderly woman or a toddler, or a man presumably. 2. Be as sexy as humanly possible. Nicki Minaj made herself a feminist icon, rejecting the male gaze in her Anaconda video. 3. Make yourself as ugly as possible, either in art or with the way you dress yourself every day. Remember, men hate it when women shave their head and don't shave any other part of their body. 4. Convert to Islam and begin wearing a niqab or a full burqa. Not joking, this shows up again and again in feminist circles. So I guess we've come full circle. A theory that criticizes the male gaze, which exists because men fear losing their genitals, is best resisted by the feminist act of joining a religion that actually contributes to the mutilation of children's genitals all over the globe. Progress. Thanks for watching, and thanks again to Bane for the opportunity to be here. You can catch me on Twitter or on my YouTube channel.